It's 5 o'clock in London, it's midday in New York, midnight in Hong Kong, 4 a.m. in Sydney, 9 a.m. in San Francisco, and 10:30 at night in Mumbai. Greetings. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Patrick L. Young, the IPO-VID live stream, Series 28, Episode 2, in the aggregate. That makes a season-ending Episode 164 starts here. Is CMU dead? I appreciate the dyed-in-the-wool Europhiles won't like this, but, and ironically, Phase A celebrated 50 years of good work this week. It seems to me that the odd notion of Capital Markets Union is DOA. That's hardly surprising, as the European Commission was utterly incapable of doing anything about CMU of any substance for at least a couple of Commission terms, and indeed the last Commissioner responsible for CMU was the somewhat breathtakingly incapable Maureen McGuinness. So here's the weird bit. There's this page on the bloated EC website, Finance European Commission is the headline, which refers to CMU. But the page relating to the new commissioner, Maria Luís Albuquerque from Portugal, shows her primary priority as, and I quote, developing a European savings and investment union, including banking and capital markets, to help leverage the enormous wealth of private savings in support of the EU's wider objectives. And her secondary priority is designing and saving and investment products at EU level to tackle the fragmentation of capital markets. In other words, CMU's having a makeover, but it's also being modified from its original purpose. Capital markets are now becoming an also-ran, as opposed to a primary priority. And once again, the banks are getting centre stage. That's unsurprising, as it's a cause for deep concern at the same time that the EU is unwilling to actually embrace regenerative capitalism. The EU believes, once again, with scant evidence to prove their case, that they can, with Soviet inelegance, central plan prosperity for the EU. It doesn't take an Einstein to ponder, are you really sure you want to repeat the same mistakes in the hope you might suddenly find differing results? In other news, Paul Atkins has been announced by President Trump as the new chairman of the SEC. That means we could see a seismic fissure in transatlantic markets that may leave Europe further adrift than ever. Once again, the news from the US is of positive interaction. The word from Brussels is a cause for deep concern amongst those of us who value entrepreneurship, growth, and prosperity. With those same values, in India, exasperated shareholders are suing SEBI after a generation spent waiting for regulatory permission to IPO the NSE, the National Stock Exchange. Where still, SEBI are working on a plan to dilute exchanges' rights to own their own clearing and settlement platforms, hugely undermining shareholder value in exchange groups. Back in the USA, I mentioned just a moment ago, of course, that incredible appointment, and fabulous news it is, Chairman Paul Atkins, the nominee for the SEC. The Trump administration is looking sharp and sharply focused on ensuring a coherent outbreak of government after a term where nobody knew if the president was even home. A big wave of news has been that number of parishioners appointed from the market structure world. In addition to Paul Atkins, as mentioned, as new SEC chairman, previous SEC chairman Jay Clayton is joining the Department of Justice. BGC Cantor boss Howard Lutnick will be trade secretary. And this one really delights me. From the parish, former ICE executive and backed CEO Kelly Loeffler will head the Small Business Administration. An entrepreneurial mind running the Entrepreneur's Office of the US government. What could be better? Brussels, take note. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad you could join us today. That was just a roundup of some of the things that have been happening during the course of the last week in the world of capital markets and market structure. We have a fabulous show for you this evening. We're going to be looking at the world of where our second batch of guests from the second half of the year were discussing their thoughts on where the capital market revolution goes next. And indeed, of course, that kicked off the 25th anniversary of the original publication of Capital Market Revolution itself. Let's start with Steve Zwick, a regular guest on this show. He's the owner, producer, host of the At Bionic Planet podcast. He joined us on the 4th of June, 2024, and was discussing carbon market development. Let's hear from Steve.
Nature positivity is going to be much bigger, despite the fact that there's no clear land, no clear demand signal. The desire for companies to establish themselves in this space is going to get bigger and bigger. And the other thing that's going to happen is it is going to be related to carbon somehow, because as we go into, with climate change, all forests are kind of in danger. You've got the immediate threat of forests being chopped down by humans, but you've also got just degradation caused by heat-related degradation and the need to maintain forests. They need to be actively managed, and that you're going to have to finance it somehow. Another big one that's going to be really big in carbon is soil. If we go into soil carbon at the forest edge, that will save the forest. The carbon payments don't really matter anymore, because in theory, soil carbon is the kind of thing that will pay for itself over time, because it usually increases yields, but it'll help de-risk that transition. So I think those are the two big things. Is the soil carbon is going to be much bigger in the near term, and this nature positivity is going to mutate into something. It's just not clear what.
Soil carbon, amongst the many exciting things coming through from carbon finance, is going to be much bigger in the near term, and nature positivity is going to mutate into something. Steve recently actually has announced a fantastic new venture. He is out there myth busting some of the nonsense that comes from the NGOs and the doomsayers and naysayers against the carbon markets, and I think that's a fantastic initiative. Hopefully we'll get a chance to chat with him about it early in the new year. So from Steve Zwick, our resident carbon guru, making, I think, his third or fourth appearance on the show. Of course, he's co-hosted a couple of great carbon discussions with me in the past, all of which you can find online at the usual places, YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook. You can search for IPO-VID. We moved on to our second guest of this segment. That was halfway through the year, 18th of June. It was joy to welcome the CEO of the International Stock Exchange Group, TISEG, for IPO-VID number 147. Cees Vermaas, who we know very, very well through having previously been head of the Amsterdam Stock Exchange under Euronext, and indeed also the boss of CME Europe Exchange in London. He was talking about us as how they brought TISE from the Channel Islands, its headquarters, to the world. Let's hear from Cees.
Well, obviously, I'm a technology kind of fanatic from the foundation and the basis of my education. That is going to change a lot and makes much more possible. And then I think the unlocking of the private potential, that is the way to go.
It's the technology, stupid, if James Carville were here today to manage to shape this around a general election slogan. And certainly something that a lot of people have been talking about. You'll remember from last week's part one review of this year, we had a great deal of discussion about AI, about all of the other masterful, wonderful technologies that are coming along. Some people also talking about blockchain and digital assets, as well as many, many other aspects to what's happening. And certainly what could be more clear than the success of the International Stock Exchange Group out of the Channel Islands to the world in managing to produce their own particularly exciting brand of exchange business with their own particularly exciting brand of technology. Another man who was very much involved in technology over the course of the years as a major league user on many bank dealing desks and across exchanges and other markets was Danny Corrigan, Mr. Repo, with over 35 years experience of wholesale market derivatives as a London-based CEO, MD and director, and also indeed with exciting stints back when Moscow was the go-go place to be in, and indeed Sydney, Australia, amongst many other overseas market postings across repo, debt, derivatives trading, clearing and broking industries. Danny joined us on the 2nd of July. He was our guest on IPO-VID number 148, discussing repo and the London reporting house. Let's hear from Danny.
I think the next thing is this: it's got to be retail. And why I'm saying that is because why not? Why, after the fall of the Silicon Valley Bank and a number of other things, if you've got your money sitting overnight in a bank, or even worse, sitting in a month's deposit, something happens at Silicon Valley Bank where 40% is pulled out in a day, as can happen, why would you do that? But if you're allowed to lend your money overnight through a swing facility to do reversing something like either invest in a money market fund or reverse repo, if that happens, so any money you've got doesn't stay unsecured, it's sent overnight into the repo market, and you could pick your collateral. Why not? That would just make sense. I know that would be good for mankind. That would be good for risk of individuals. It would be good for the banks because it diversify their funding base. So I think what will happen is we'll see obvious things like access to retail, and then I think with on the financing all round for retail, why shouldn't it be that way? Why shouldn't it be with your Revolut card that you can short equities and borrow them? There's no reason at all why you shouldn't, apart from the fact there are certain vested interests in securities lending markets, not the repo market, the securities lending markets, which would not like that at all because it levels the playing field.
I do beg your pardon. I seem to have been completely muting myself there, which is not very good. So that was really fascinating dealing with Danny. He was talking all about what was going on in the world of repo and what was happening there and the rise of retail, which is something that, of course, in one of our early shows, Matt Chamberlain was talking about. And that was a really, really key aspect to the whole marketplace, that if you think about it, the CEO of the London Metals Exchange, the most wholesale exchange market in the world, he was talking about the rise of Reddit retail and saying the rise of Reddit retail is going to be a permanent fixture. That was all those years ago during, well, pretty much the COVID epidemic and the rise originally of the whole retail trading force of Reddit traders. And here we see Danny reiterating the same points again, talking all about what's been going on in relation to the marketplace. In repo, even potentially being completely revolutionized by the opportunity for retail investors to be involved. Fascinating, interesting reference there to Silicon Valley Bank. There's a collapse that we've more or less forgotten about, and it's relatively fresh in the memory, or ought to be, amongst bank failures. The startup bank of the Californian state effectively disappearing off the face of the earth very rapidly. Now, by the time we reached the 16th of July, ladies and gentlemen, we'll talk about this later, why we were there. We had an amazing special. IPO-VID teamed up with PhD Positivity Hacks delivered by Women on It, presented by my brilliant wife, Beate Young, and we went inside the ice house. We were at the New York Stock Exchange itself in the hallowed library, and we had an opportunity to have a show with not one, not two, but three fantastic female guests, and they were absolutely awesome, discussing all manner of aspects of the future of markets, what went on at the NYSE, and indeed how that is becoming a vitally important epicenter of the world. And indeed, here we are, we're coming to the end of the year. Where are we at now? We started the year, I think 60.5% of the world's market cap was actually sitting in the USA between listings on NYSE and listings on NASDAQ. I think we're closer to 70% as we finish the year. How extraordinary. And indeed, doesn't look like it's going to slow down during Trump 47, a presidential era where we're going to see drill, baby, drill, and a lot of moves to try and expand the economy, most notably under, of course, that Small Business Administration head herself, an ICE alumni, Kelly Loeffler. So the first of our three guests we're going to highlight this evening, talking about where does the capital market revolution goes next, is the head of international capital markets at the NYSE, the fantastic Cassandra Seier. Let's hear from Cassandra.
It's pretty difficult to predict the future, but I would imagine there's going to be hopefully more adaptation of advanced technology to help in the capital markets process, and hopefully additional technology or AI. It might make raising debt and capital to be different. It might streamline the process. It might help in efficiency and hopefully a little more security as well. So I'm excited about that opportunity, that potential.
And there you go. Once again, it's the technology that we're looking at coming from the altar of the most famous capital market in the world, the New York Stock Exchange, hallowed ground on Wall Street. And the truth is, more adaptation of advanced capital markets processes are going to be driven by advanced technology, and additional technology or AI might streamline that process. Very interesting point being made by Cassandra, the head of international capital markets. Our second guest from our July the 16th show, that was IPO-VID number 149, inside the Ice House, was the head of relationship management at the New York Stock Exchange, the wonderful Jess Froats. Let's hear from Jess.
So I'm going to bring it back to data. Our teams are constantly working on ways to use the data. And I think getting more juice out of the data we have and big data and using new applications that provide efficiency and insight is where you're going to be headed next.
Big data. Of course, if you're going to use all that technology, you're going to have all of that AI that Cassandra was talking about. Jess is quite right. Where else can you go but work on ways to use data and all those extra data flows that are now being captured digitally that weren't even possible to capture all those years ago, and then all of the different Greek letters that may relate to every single one of them wherever you're going when you're trying to find efficiencies and insights on where markets are going to be headed next. And of course, Greek letters, well, they're a huge thing for Meaghan Dugan. Meaghan was the head of options at the New York Stock Exchange when she joined us during July. She's currently, well, we don't know where you are, Meaghan. I do hope you're well, and we look forward to seeing you in a fantastic new position soon. You took the opportunity to leave the New York Stock Exchange soon after we met you. Hope it wasn't us caused you to leave. No, seriously, Meaghan, absolutely fantastic woman who's come from the West Coast to the East Coast and is the options doyenne of many marketplaces around the world, but has been head of options at the New York Stock Exchange. She was with us again inside the Ice House, making for a marvelous trio of guests on the 16th of July for IPO-VID number 149. Inside the Ice House, let's hear from Meaghan.
I think that US option market makers love making markets on two-sided markets. So we love more capabilities of more IPOs. So we would love, we expect and we see the IPO market heating back up. So
Right.
we hope that the capital market continues to be super strong for us. We're at roughly, I said 43 million contracts ADV a day. Somebody's talked about 100 million contracts ADV at some point in the next couple of years. So we hope that the strength of the capital markets will allow the US option market to grow that space with the extra interest coming from abroad. We're seeing a lot of interest from Europe, Asia, LATAM, and then just a very strong capital markets so we can start trading more options.
Those numbers are just breathtaking, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, a long time ago, people were talking about actually we'd pretty much run out of stocks that we could manage to add options to just 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You look at the number of stocks that have reached the sort of level of market capitalization that nowadays can support options. It is astounding the world over. And of course, I'm not just talking about those $7, $8, $9 trillion stocks that they have listed in the USA. We're talking about hundreds of shares nowadays being listed with remarkably liquid options, something we've talked about very often on IPO-VID during the course of the year. And indeed, how the American options market with all those competing platforms, where did we end the year at? I forget. I think we ended with 18 different American exchanges trading options by the time we reached the end, but do feel to write in and contradict me if I've got that one wrong. 43 million contracts a day, looking at 100 million contracts a day. God bless America. Ambition is a wonderful thing. What's even more exciting is it's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, and it's going to happen probably sooner than we think. Thank you, Meaghan Dugan, for joining us on IPO-VID. It was a marvelous show, our double header with PhD, along with Jessica Froats and along with Cassandra Seier, all from inside the Ice House, New York Stock Exchange. It was a marvelous conversation altogether. And thinking of marvelous conversations, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to give us a little bit of love if you possibly could, please. We really appreciate it. Something along the lines will always help us get the AI algorithms listening to IPO-VID, and it gives us an opportunity to help educate more people about markets the world over. Because let's face it, one thing we're going to need to reach 100 million contracts average daily volume of US stock options is the education of the next generation of investors. Someone who's been very strongly involved with multiple generations of investors was Dr. Richard Smith. He made a return to our show this year. He was talking about Cycles, the Mysterious Forces that Trigger Events, a book which he had actually recently updated and edited and published. And it was quite a fascinating tome as well when he joined us on the 30th of July 2024 for IPO-VID. And there was a little roundophobia landmark for technical analysts. It was show number 150. Let's hear from Richard.
I'm personally fascinated by the new AI technologies. And I think that while people talk about, I know I'm going to open up a can of worms here, but this idea of AGI, right? Artificial general intelligence. I don't believe that that is actually going to happen. What we're going to learn from AI is what's uniquely special about human intelligence. I think that it is going to continue, like the former technologies have done, to open up new opportunities for higher order value creation by human beings. So what I'm particularly excited about is how machines and people learn to work together more, how we really integrate this new technology, and how we can leverage this new technology to help us.
Fascinating. not just talking about artificial intelligence, but granularizing it, looking at the idea that artificial general intelligence actually may be something AI is not going to give us. And yet we reached the end of the year, and it would seem that other people are in agreement with Richard already. That was Dr. Richard Smith from the Foundation of the Study of Cycles, because actually a lot of people are pushing back on just how fast or how well artificial intelligence is going to move in terms of replicating everything humans can do, even though they can do some of our tasks. Steal copyright, do all sorts of things with processing data, etc. Wonderful things. And certainly if you're reading it this week in Exchange Invest, you might have noticed there was a fantastic survey out talking about how many people are using artificial intelligence, machine learning and similar tools for greater ability to deliver compliance across exchange and customer-related platforms in wholesale and retail financial markets. That's a fabulous process for which artificial intelligence is really made. I'm particularly struck by the way that in this instance, Richard was talking about, we're going to learn from AI is what's uniquely special about human intelligence. And that's certainly something for the future. And it's going to continue like the former technologies have done to open up new opportunities for higher order value creation by human beings. Amen, Dr. Richard Smith. Fabulous comment. I could not agree more. And that brings us neatly to somebody who's had an incredible year and is genuinely opening up all manner of new higher value opportunities for investors around the world. Bjørn Sibbern. Now, Bjørn joined us first of all much earlier in the canon of IPO-VIDs when he was the head of NASDAQ Europe. He then seamlessly moved to become global head of exchanges at SIX Swiss Exchange. And it was from that position he joined us on the 10th of September for IPO-VID number 151, discussing SIX, the Swiss paradigm. Let's hear from Bjørn.
If you look at the equity market, if you look at listings, it works pretty well. If we look at capital raise from listed company, it works pretty well. If we look at equity trading, it works super well during crisis. Investors can get in and out. It's relatively cheap to trade equities. I don't think we'll see a big revolution where it's more like an evolution. Yes, you will see changes like T+1 and maybe going closer to T+0 or T+15 minutes or something like that. You see changes probably around opening hours, longer opening hours for certain products. Looking back in 20 years' time, maybe I'd be totally wrong. But what I see in front of me now is more evolution versus revolution, simply because the market works super well today.
Evolution as opposed to revolution, I think that's certainly a very fair thing when you're moving, well, of course, hopefully in 1,000 or so days, Europe might move to T+1. The United States of America made that epic move earlier in the year. And I think it is quite valid as well, looking how the whole evolution versus revolution pitch within the standard, if one might call it that, stock market has been taking place during the course of the year. And of course, some of that has been the incredible evolution of overnight trading in the USA, for instance, which becomes very, very key. One of the best things that was a fabulous evolution during the course of the year was none other than the elevation of Bjørn Sibbern, our friend and twice a guest on IPO-VID. We're looking forward to his third appearance next year because now he's in the hot seat. He is the CEO outright of the SIX Swiss Exchanges Group. Congratulations, Bjørn, taking over a couple of weeks ago from Jos Gisselhoff, who has, well, announced that he's making plans. We don't quite know what or where for some sort of new venture in the Middle East. He's going to be joining in the near future. Be fascinating to see what company he is joining. Now, a company that's had a spectacular year during the course, in fact, spectacular couple of years, is a vendor we don't hear a lot of headlines about, but yet it is powering all sorts of markets. In some ways, I suppose, actually, the most exciting thing was probably late this year when finally the CFTC was beaten into submission by the US court system. Hallelujah, thank goodness. Thank heavens for justice. And we saw PredictX, the IBKR, interactive brokers market, which has been built for originally predictions of all manner of other things, but actually ended up predicting particularly around about the US presidential election. That was sitting hand in hand with various other platforms that managed to push the whole thing forward. And that which traded, I think if I remember correctly, something like 1 million contracts in several weeks just around the US presidential election and so on, was another example of a product powered by Connemara. And that's why it was a joy on the 17th of September for IPO-VID number 152 to talk about the future of exchange matching engines with Connemara Technologies. We had the co-founders and co-bosses of that organization with us, Maureen Downs and Jim Downs. First of all, ladies first, let's hear from Maureen.
I can't emphasize it enough that the number of new exchanges is going to grow exponentially, fast and furious, beyond anything that any of us could have envisioned.
Hallelujah. A comment that PLY would be delighted to make himself, because actually I totally agree. This is the age of the exchange in the digital era, ladies and gentlemen. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with Maureen Downs on this point. She's a co-founder of Connemara Technologies, and indeed I believe Connemara are going to be powering many of these new markets. The number of new exchanges is going to grow exponentially, fast and furious, beyond anything that any of us could have envisioned. A spectacular remark, one I totally wholeheartedly agree with, and indeed one which we champion via Exchange Invest. If you're not already reading and you're in the exchange business, you really ought to be behind the water cooler of the Bourse business, the exchange of information. Join us at exchangeinvest.com and sign up for a subscription right now, because frankly, you can't afford not to be a subscriber to Exchange Invest if you're working in the Bourse business or anywhere thereabouts. Now that leads on very elegantly to Jim Downs. Jim is the other co-founder of Connemara Technologies. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Connemara Technologies. He was with us on the 17th of September for IPO-VID 152 alongside his brilliant wife, Maureen, discussing the future of exchange matching engines with Connemara Technologies. Let's hear from Jim.
The trend we're seeing, and this is particularly among new exchange operators, is that they want to go direct to customer, and they want integrated clearing and risk at the same time. So that's where I'm seeing it going, is the collapsing of that.
And there's a very interesting point. We're seeing this mountain of new exchanges, this incredible trend where they're coming left, right, and center, as Maureen elegantly pointed out in her remark about where does the capital market revolution go next. And Jim drilled down into the trend that he's seeing as CEO of Connemara Technologies, which is so many new exchange operators are very, very keen to be able to go direct to their customers and integrating their clearing and risk all at the same time. Wonderful stuff, because it should, of course, make future safer markets in the age of the exchange. Now, earlier on, I mentioned the fact that we went to the New York Stock Exchange this year. And of course, it was an epic event, not just because we got inside the ice house and did a fabulous live stream where you had the opportunity to benefit from the expertise of those three power ladies, Cassandra, Seier, Jessica Froats, and Meaghan Dugan, but actually because the Friday previous to when we recorded this particular event, we had an absolutely epic moment. That was the opportunity driven by, well, the reason we're here today discussing where does the capital market revolution go next, because on July the 5th this year, I had the incredible opportunity, invited by the president of the New York Stock Exchange herself, Lynn Martin, who of course is a previous guest on IPO-VID. Check out her magnificent discussion about data back when she was running the ICE data business before she was elevated to the NYSE president, where she's doing such a terrific job. She wrote to me earlier in the year and said, look, I know it's the 25th anniversary of your book, Capital Market Revolution, coming up, and I read it early in my career. I found it a fabulous tome. I would really like to say thank you and invite you to come and ring the bell of the New York Stock Exchange. Well, what an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. In big world, what could be better than the opportunity to savor my best minute of the year? Frankly, it was an absolutely epic moment. Here we go with the fabulous scarf wearing in the background and a great group of people, including a couple of former IPO-VID guests. See if you can spot them in the background. This was our opportunity where Exchange Invest rang the closing bell. Let's hear it from the bell. Best day ever. Thank you, Nicey. It was incredible. Thank you so much, Lynn Martin, for that amazing opportunity to ring the most famous bell in the world of financial markets. It was just an incredible experience, ladies and gentlemen. If you ever get the chance to go, even if you're just a guest on the floor, it is a sensational opportunity to see the markets in action and indeed enjoy a truly unique experience. Now that brings us neatly to our finance book of the week. The Everything Blueprint, the microchip design that changed the world by James Ashton, tells the story of ARM. From humble beginnings to its pivotal role in the mobile phone revolution, James details the titanic power struggle for control of the microchip through the eyes of a unique British enterprise that has found itself in the middle of that battle. And indeed, we've got some great comments coming up from James in just a moment. He was our guest on IPO-VID 157 talking about the quoted company's agenda. So that is our book of the week for this week, ladies and gentlemen, and gives you an opportunity to remember that if you want a more macro read, if you want to know what our book of the week is the day that it's announced, then sign up for free to exchangeinvest.com's EI Weekend Edition. It's a more macro read. You'll find it interesting, something for everybody there, as long as you've got a sense of curiosity. And of course, please, in order to manage to maintain these particular live streams through next year, we've already got some fantastic guests lined up for 2025. Do please subscribe to Exchange Invest, only $499 per user per year, and you'll find it invaluable if you're trying to keep up with what's going on in the world of exchanges and market structure. Space, the final frontier. That was a topic we had with our fabulous guest, Dr. Armen Papazian, the director and co-founder of the Space Value Foundation. He joined us on the 24th of September this year for IPO-VID number 153, discussing finding value in the space economy. Let's hear from Armen.
The next capital market revolution is when a space-adjusted mathematics becomes the foundational element of trading and also the instrument design and engineering, because believe me, to explore space, we cannot go out there with our teeny tiny mathematics measuring value and cash flows based purely on risk and time. In the grand context of the universe, those equations will not take us very far.
So there you go, to infinity and beyond, as one great astronaut famously said in a magnificent cartoon film. Yeah, from Toy Story to the opportunities that abound in the world of space math, space investing, and much more. A fascinating opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. And Dr. Armen Papazian was bringing us some very, very interesting insights on behalf of his fabulous chair at the Space Value Foundation, and indeed his most recent book, all about the same thing, about value in space. When I was in New York during the course of July, I had the opportunity to pop round the corner from the New York Stock Exchange and meet Aaron Kaplan, the co-CEO of Prometheum Inc. Prometheum are pretty unique. They're the people who actually set out to be regulated in the blockchain universe. And that's why the topic of our conversation for IPO-VID number 154 on the 1st of October was Prometheum, blockchains, markets, and the future of finance. Let's hear from Aaron.
A major part of the capital market revolution is going to involve tokenization. But in order for tokenization to really be empowered, you need the market infrastructure that can allow for that public trading, clearance, settlement, and custody of those digital asset securities. And that's what Prometheum has created.
Tokenization, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be the future of what we're going to be looking at. And it's going to be a very, very major step forward. Although I must admit, I'm still kind of cynical. I don't know that we're going to end up actually, while we will see real world assets, while we will see a greater breakthrough in what's being traded, does it all have to be settled on a blockchain? I'm not entirely convinced yet. We shall see whether one blockchain conquers all, whether multiple blockchains lead to chaos, or whether we just end up with a couple of nice distributed databases which can basically feed off each other and leave us with similar sorts of value. Who knows? That's going to be a controversial issue during 2025 to discuss. Patrick Wood was our guest on the 8th of October for IPO-VID number 155, discussing credit rating securities, empowering risk management in credit markets. Patrick is the CEO and president of Delphex Capital Markets, a company listed on the TSX Venture Exchange. Very interesting it is too, working around the whole business of providing a sense of insurance for counterparties that are holding debt that might be downgraded. It's a very, very interesting concept, one that could work very, very well, indeed could mesh neatly with the likes of Mr. Repo Danny Corrigan in the future. Let's hear from Patrick Wood.
I think one of the greatest opportunities that the world is missing right now is the micro small cap world of equities. There's just been no love for that market for 12 years once again. And there are some incredibly strong opportunities across all sectors in that space where these companies have had no opportunity to fund and expand their businesses. So most of them have had to bootstrap or really, on their hands and knees begging for more capital from shareholders to keep going.
Very interesting. At a point in time when much of the year indeed was taken with the excitement over the multiple trillion-dollar stocks that were growing up in the world of technology, particularly the likes of Nvidia, Microsoft et al. And of course also joined by Berkshire Hathaway from the stable of the great Warren Buffett, the sage of Nebraska. Patrick Wood, that is, not Patrick Young. Patrick Wood was looking at the very interesting possibility in microcap and small caps. They surely have got a huge opportunity to explode at some point in time. And certainly you'd think about it, given the amount of conversation that's going into the idea of tokenization and all these sorts of things of bringing real world assets to market, surely there ought to be a little bit more love for those very, very small listed companies in a digital world. Food for thought. Again, I think it's a topic we'll hear a lot more of in 2025. Now, on 15th of October, we had one of my favorite shows of the year. It was a fantastic conversation. A woman who does not claim to have any particular knowledge of finance, but she brought us really, I think, one of the books of the year. Paulina Bren is the author of She-Wolves, The Untold History of Women on Wall Street. She's a writer and award-winning historian who teaches at Vassar College on the Pittsburgh Endowment Chair in the Humanities. Paulina was a joy to behold, talking about this incredible history of the early women on Wall Street, the many ways in which they managed to find themselves working on Wall Street, sometimes with rather exciting, interesting, duplicitous even means of getting their jobs, but nonetheless, they blazed the trail that allowed us, indeed, to have 3 power women on our show when we were inside the Ice House earlier in the year. Let's hear from the captivating Paulina Bren.
I'm going to say a revolution is all about equality. A common argument for why there should be real equality in finance and elsewhere is the whole argument of, well, women will bring certain talents and they can do this, they can do that. They're good at listening, they're good storytellers. No, I think it's a very essentialist argument. We know that when there's equality and diversity, we do better. Women are 50% of the population. And structurally, Wall Street continues to be based around the ideal worker being the man, right? It's not even that radical. 50% of the population. It's a revolution that doesn't feel revolutionary to me, I suppose.
A revolution that does not feel revolutionary, but is nonetheless all the more vital, ladies and gentlemen. A revolution is all about equality. When there's equality and diversity, we do better. A magnificent message from Paulina Bren, and do catch yourself a copy once you can of She-Wolves. It is a magnificent read. I really thoroughly recommend it. Ideal for all genders to find in their Christmas stocking this December the 25th. Now, I mentioned James Ashton earlier on. He's the CEO these days of the Quoted Companies Alliance. He used to be the city editor of the Sunday Times newspaper, probably the most read newspaper in the UK quality market, certainly for business, of a Sunday. On the 22nd of October, he joined us for IPO-VID 157, discussing the Quoted Companies agenda. Let's hear from James.
I hope we're heading towards a retail revolution. I hope that buying shares becomes as easy as buying crypto. It certainly should be. That's a combination of people taking more interest in their retirement plans. It's something about fixing the plumbing so that companies can really engage with their ultimate beneficial owner. It's about promotion and getting people engaged with the company at the bottom of their street, perhaps their employer. But I really hope that we can have a retail revolution going forward.
One of the things undoubtedly driving that 43 million to 100 million that of average daily volume that Meaghan Dugan was talking about in US equity options is undoubtedly a retail revolution. We talked about Matt Chamberlain endorsing the Reddit retail revolution way back in COVID 4 or 5 years ago when we were all locked up against our better intentions and the better judgment of the government. And here we have, again, running through this show from Danny Corrigan all the way to James Ashton, the CEO of the Quoted Companies Alliance, a retail revolution. I agree. It should be that we can find an easy way to buy shares. Fascinatingly opportunity there. And at the head of the show, I was criticizing the European Commission. Why? Because they haven't delivered us capital markets union, because there is so much opportunity there. And we don't need quasi-weird investment products or other top-down solutions. We simply need a bottom-up opportunity with a risk culture, with that risk culture being encouraged and not taxed into oblivion, as indeed sadly even has been the case under the new Labour government in the United Kingdom during the course of the year since July the 4th when they were elected in what was a kind of weak landslide a result. They dominate Parliament, but they're not popular out there because taxes are too high. And high taxes are not a good thing when you're trying to propel forward a retail revolution in investing. From the retail revolution to an opportunity for everyone, the man on the street, the woman on the street, whatever gender on the street, to invest in the art market. On the 29th of October, we had a fascinating show, IPO-VID 158, on bringing art to market with the CEO of Art MTF. That's essentially an exchange as equivalent of a pool, a liquidity pool. You might call it whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's an exchange to all intents and purposes, a regulated marketplace, but not actually a full exchange. Operating out of Liechtenstein, Yassir Benjelloun-Touimi joined us to talk about bringing art to market. Let's hear from Yassir.
Into this massive transformation with a lot of uncertainties, we are proud to participate somehow on bringing something that is a dose of love in their life, a dose of beauty on their life. These ideas that open up and allow us to see the beauty in things that take our brain off of the stress of a daily basis, of the stress of our future. And that is important for us.
Beauty, art, love, balance, all the sorts of things we need in our everyday life. Yes, indeed, I try to even get some outside of markets myself. But there in Artex is the beautiful opportunity delivered for you to be a part holder of a particular artwork in perpetuity, where nowadays, of course, it's only a very, very small number of plutocrats who can afford the great artworks of our time. And that's, I think, something which is really, really fascinating in terms of where the capital market revolution goes next, because we're seeing here very clearly the opportunity for real world assets to be owned and traded on an exchange. IPO-VID 159 on the 5th of November led us to looking at US retail equity trading in focus. We did that with Khody Azmoon. He's the CEO and co-founder of Blocks Market, a newly announced platform that's looking to start trading from next year and will be adding some fascinating value to US equity trading in the cash underlying stock market. Let's hear from Khody.
We're going to see more growth in overnight trading. We're going to see more growth in retail opportunities. Hopefully we'll participate in that. But more importantly, I think we're going to see the US markets continue to grow, lead the way.
It's very difficult to see at this juncture how the US markets are not going to be leading the way, actually, because we've got the Trump administration coming in. They seem to be supremely pro-business. We've got a potentially deregulatory CEO, or chairman rather, of the SEC. We've got a trade secretary who himself is very, very embedded in markets in Howard Lutnick. Secretary for the Small Business Administration being Kelly Loeffler, who herself has incredible attributes as an entrepreneur and building business and building value throughout. She understands what entrepreneurs go through. Those are just a few of the people that are coming into government. It's very, very difficult to see how we're not going to have another golden age for the USA breaking out during the period of Trump 47. At the same time, it's vitally important, whatever you're doing, however you're investing, not to get overly stressed. That was one of the messages that was coming from our guest, Mick Heyman, author of Mellow Your Money, How to Surf the Market and Build Wealth Without Stressing Yourself Out. The founder of Heyman Investment Consulting joined us on the 12th of November for IPO-VID number 160. Let's hear what he thinks about the capital market revolution and where it's going to go next from Mick.
I believe that we're in an environment where even though rates are higher than people had gotten used to, say, a handful of years ago, that stable interest rates and potentially even slightly lower rates if the Federal Reserve continues to lower rates a bit lead to good markets. And so not without a few potholes along the way, I believe over the next 12 to 18 months, the markets can continue to be a friendly place to be. And as long as you don't get psychologically affected by that unexpected bump in the road that I also believe we'll find the next 12 to 18 months, you stay invested right to your allocation that fits your unique risk threshold.
Surf that market and stick to your unique risk threshold over the 12 to 18 month period coming up. Mick Heyman considering it going to be a very market-friendly environment. And I think in the aftermath of the Trump election, he may well be right, even though some are worried about protectionism and other issues coming from the early stage of the Trump term. Changing gears, Louisjan Bonthuys joined us. He's the VP of Engineering at Housing Anywhere. But prior to that, he spent more than 20 years developing technology with a leading vendor in Africa who produced software for exchanges throughout the world. Therefore, we had a fantastic discussion about the evolution of markets technology on November the 19th in IPO-VID number 161. Let's hear from Louisjan.
From a tech point of view, I clearly see that cloud-based solutions are going to be the future. So the conversation of should we be in the cloud or not is going to disappear. By default, everything is going to be in the cloud. And I see the cloud providers playing a massive role in exchanges going forward, where they're actually going to bring various products to market to actually give exchanges a lot more space to maneuver in and to run their products in. And I also see a lot of changes in the way software is developed in terms of exchange platforms, that exchanges can basically pick how they want the exchange to run from a cloud-based solution instead of the other way around. See that exchanges are going to control the markets and not the software.
And there you have it. Cloud is the future, a message which various people have been talking about previously on this show at various times. And exchanges are going to control the market. Pardon me. Exchanges are going to control the markets and not the software. Thank you, Louisjan Bonthuys. It was a fascinating discussion. Looking forward to where the exchange market technology is going to be evolving. On the 26th of November, we welcomed Shiloh Bates to IPO-VID number 162. The topic was bringing CLO to your investment flow. CLO being collateralized loan obligations. If you don't understand anything about that, go watch that video. There's some fascinating possibilities for investment in different tranches and types of CLOs as we go along. When it comes to where does the capital market revolution go next? Well, let's hear from Shiloh.
Well, the revolution from here again, I think it's just increased exposure to CLO securities for lots of different investors. So historically, again, it was institutions that were the primary investors in all CLO securities, AAA to equity. And now with the growth, again, of ETFs, of interval funds, more and more investors are targeting these securities. They like the risk-adjusted returns. And oftentimes their financial advisors recommending these securities. I think a lot of them are going to come around to investing in CLO securities over time. The proliferation of CLO securities into lots of different investors' portfolios is the revolution I'm seeing.
What an interesting opportunity. The proliferation of CLO securities into different investor portfolios around the world. That's quite a fascinating deal altogether. And I would recommend, ladies and gentlemen, you go back and watch all of these videos because there was so much wisdom therein with an incredible panoply of guests throughout the course of the year. Don't forget, you can catch up with all the headlines in the world of market structure and Exchange Invest daily. You can subscribe to that via exchangeinvest.com. Do please give us a like for this show, because it all helps to bolster the wonderful AI bots into realizing just how important it is to have a little Exchange Invest in your life every day in this, the age of the exchange. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our show, which started the year with, well, some quite fascinating discussions. We had Susan Giddle and Ira Harris talking about the future of markets. John Files, who was one of the first people who was in there talking about the possibility for AI and related issues. Brad Schaefer, Raphael Plata, Tian Bazoin, Hamish Adurian, Rainer Zietelman, Gunnar Stephenson, Magnus Hegland, Tom Caldwell, a fascinating man from Urbana Securities, Bharat Kulkarni, the man who helped build the Ethiopian Commodity Exchange, Chris Skinner, Roland Belgard from Saudi Arabia. We also had Brian Heyman ahead of, just a few months ahead of the trend which started to become explosive this year, talking about all the things that go on at night in the US securities market. And what a magnificent year it's been for Blue Ocean Technologies, run by Brian Heyman. Tapelo Chishole came to us from Africa, Jason Sen from Thailand, Rainer Zittelman once again, Steve Zwick, Kees Vermaas. In this show, we had their highlights very, very briefly earlier in the show. Thank you, Danny Corrigan, and thank you, Cassandra, Seier, Jessica Froats and Meaghan Dugan for making an epic show for both PhD and IPO-VID during the course of our visit to the Ice House this year in July. Dr. Richard Smith, you heard today from, also Bjørn Sibbern, the now chief executive of all of the Swiss Exchange Group. Maureen Downs, great point by Maureen Downs. I think one of the best points of the day. This is an opportunity for essentially unlimited growth in the exchange business, and I believe we're going to see that going forward. If you've got any ideas of exchanges you want built, then ping me a message. We're always open to building more exchanges around the world, ladies and gentlemen, and we have unparalleled resources and inputs in order to make you achieve greater things with less money faster. Jim Downs also was looking on the interesting minutiae of what's going on in all of the different aspects of the development of the exchange markets, including direct access to the client and indeed integration of risk and compliance and all sorts of clearing functions as well as settlement. Dr. Armen Papazian, he was opening our eyes to the space economy. As I mentioned earlier, Paulina Bren was a captivating guest talking about she-wolves, the incredible history of how women managed to come onto Wall Street, and indeed what we do need for 2025 is a yet more diverse world as we get towards a 50-50 allocation of positions and employment throughout the world of finance. Aaron Kaplan, we heard about talking about the blockchain. Patrick Wood on the fascinating credit-linked securities and what happens in the event of a downgrade. We also heard from James Ashton, Yassir, Benjelloun-Touimi, Khody, Azmoon, another US stock market platform. It's going to look very interesting. Mellow your money with Mick Heyman. A fabulous conversation with Louisjan Bonthuys, talking all about the very, very interesting possibilities for the future of exchange technology and markets as a whole. Shiloh Bates came along and explained to us the wonders of CLO investment. And of course, last week we had IPO-VID, the year in review part 1 through the lens of the capital market revolution. And of course, this week we had show 2 in that series. I want to thank all of the production team who worked on this. Thank you to AJ, Racy, Janella, Jamil, and Kim. And also, particularly tonight's gallery has been Desiree, Fernando, and Marianne. You've all done a great job during the course of the year. That was absolutely marvelous. This concludes the canon of the year for IPO-VID at the end of episode number 164, or series 28, episode 2, if you prefer to think about it in our 6-episode canons. We're going to be back next year, though. We've got a great show already lined up for January the 7th with Joe Sakela. He is the boss of another fascinating exchange being built in the USA to appeal to a fabulous, wonderful, and huge potential niche. So, ladies and gentlemen, for 2024, it's a wrap. Stay tuned for IPO-VID returning on January 7th. And in the meantime, don't forget, please renew or indeed sign up for a subscription to Exchange Invest so that we can get back to making more of these live streams in 2025 and indeed also producing the benchmark of the exchange business, the bulletin of the bourse, the exchange of information, Exchange Invest. My name is Patrick L. Young. I just want to wish you a fabulous year in life and markets. Don't forget also, get yourselves a couple of stocking fillers if you're buying a copy of She Wolves. Why don't you get an ebook? Capital Market Revolution, the 25th anniversary edition, is now available. You can download that from Amazon, and a fabulous read, I do believe it makes, with 10,000 extra words of new content compared to what we had in the original version 25 years ago, back when print books were all the thing and nobody had ever heard of a Kindle. Thanks again for watching. My name is Patrick L. Young. I wish you all a great week in life and markets, a great Christmas. We're looking forward to seeing you on January the 7th. Thank you very, very much to everybody in the Exchange Invest team for what's been an epic and incredible year. And thanks to all our subscribers who've supported this. We really, really appreciate your signing up in order to allow us to bring people more news about the miracle of markets, the exchange of information. I wish you all, once again, a fabulous, fantastic, happy festive period, whatever way you're celebrating. We'll see you in 2025. Over and out.